Oh, and good evening. It's August 26th, 2025. We're continuing our discussion collection in our Outside the Class series. This series, from the Bible Project, covers the entire TaNaK, also known as the Hebrew Bible, or the Old Testament. Those source videos are available for your review on TheDustyFeet.com, the Outside the Class section. Because the intent of Outside the Class, we listen to that in-class lecture first. We try to keep these to about 15 minutes, make them easier to catch up on. So we're on a quest, scroll by scroll, book by book, a journey through this collection, just maybe with a fun and different twist. Our hope with the Dusty Feed is to foster discussion and help build and support communities. If you are not already connected to a community or just want to share and interact, this community has 4 primary ways to interact. 1. DustyFeet.com. That's our primary place to find everything. You are always free to comment. 2. Facebook, at The Dusty Feet. These videos and other videos are also available for comment and discussion. And 3. We have a Discord channel. The invite link is there below. Be vocal, be written, be loving. And 4, and as always, you are welcome to send an email to bob@thedustyfeet.com. These places, they will be moderated, and guidelines will be set to ensure healthy, safe discussion. And as always on the Dusty Feet, this is a place where we can safely explore the endless ways of God and the interconnection of His creation. Belief understandings may be challenged, divine misunderstandings may exist, and traditional teachings might falter as we pursue connection, context, and community with God and each other here in an environment of grace and love. And of course, before we forget, if you do find these kinds of podcasts useful, so you click that subscribe button. Those reminders, just there to help you. But also, if you think these might be useful to others, please, that is when you click that like button, because that is how YouTube chooses to share these to more people if they wish. So remember, in this series, we're going to cover the entire TaNaK, the Old Testament. We're going to do it in the original order of the Hebrew Scriptures. We just need to remember that the videos that we're going to be discussing, although maybe not in that order, they're just the tip of the iceberg. They're part of a learning series that I highly recommend, and of course, all of them can be found on the Bible Project website. Because we're going to ask many questions about all kinds of things. Answers? Well, we'll see. So Samuel, first scroll, start part 19, right? Making decisions, evil spirits from God, jealousy, conspiracy, and Saul was trying to kill David with a spear. David escaped. Twice. Then Saul assigned David to a commander of a mere 1,000 men. And if we were able to, we could probably put a highlight here, because what will come from this assignment and these men are going to have a large impact on the story in the future. Put a tag. Remember that. So the issue we have is that God has removed His spirit from Saul, and He's pushed him a little further, right? He was behind David. He was prospering him. Not only that, but Israel is also behind him. Like I've said before, I want to repeat it. We get here to a point sometimes when we read over things, but sometimes we don't stop to look in, to listen to some things. And I know my dad and I, we were in a study and we were going through the scroll of Mark, I think, and it brought up a point in the study to a particular point. Well, the point's not unimportant. The fact is that he said, well, I've read the Bible many times and yet I never saw this. I think it's interesting because it made me think again that we at times just say we read something. It doesn't mean that we read it, as in really look at it, learned from it, gained from it, possibly even prospered in some way from it. Or did we do it just to say that, hey, I read this 5 times? I'm not sure how I might do on a book report after reading it, but at least I got through the book. We reach a point here in verse 16 where it says, But all Israel and Judah loved David, and he went out and came in before them. Yeah. So again, like I mentioned, we've seen this in scrolls before, right? Where we have the mention of Israel and Judah separate. And yet they're not separate. Again, do you understand what I'm saying? They're not separate kingdoms. They are all Israel. They are one nation here. If you're not sure whether the author is introducing maybe something where they're starting to maybe be a separate thinking here, I'm not compelled by that, but it could be a thought. But I think what we have here, in my humble opinion, another realization that these are backward looks, that these were gathered together and put back later for us to read, us here in the future, and that something gets mentioned that kind of tips the hat, that the writers here are saying that at that time they were still together. This is what's going on, without saying they're still together and this is what's going on. We just get that. We get those things. I think it's food for thought. Because remember, sometimes when we look at text, just remember it's not written in the moment. These texts are always backward glances, and sometimes a little hint in the text will give us an idea of what's maybe going on, something more that might be involved. I think one of the things about Saul that's worth looking at is the mirror Saul's holding. And I'm talking about ourselves. I'm talking about when we look at Saul, we see Saul's face, but I think we see a mirror, right? We look in that mirror and we see ourselves. And I think that's both in a macro and a micro thought, as in people, humans, as ourselves, the larger group, but then also ourselves as individuals. Because I think we can see where conspiracy and jealousy can taint what could have been an excellent relationship. And then we have God saying, okay, if you want to go that direction, we'll go there. I don't think it's going to look pretty when we look back on it. But one of the things that I want us to remember, so way back, just before Goliath, we had the people. We realized that we have no written story where Saul promised to the people that he would give his daughter and wealth to the one who killed Goliath, right? Remember, we had that conversation? So then when we get to this twisted part in the middle of chapter 18, where we get to this how far south Saul's heart was going, how twisted it was going, and how he wanted to drag him down, but also in this dishonoring way. Again, remember that Saul personally had already tried to kill him twice. It didn't work. So dishonor seems to be the deal. And we get to this section starting in verse 17. Then Saul says to David, "Here's my older daughter, Merab. I'll give her to you as a wife. Only be a valiant man for me and fight the Lord's battles." For Saul thought, "My hand shall not be against him, but let the hand of the Philistines be against him." But David said to Saul, "Who am I, and what is my life or my father's family in Israel that I should be the king's son-in-law?" So it came about at the time when Merab, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David, that she was given to Adriel, the Meholthalite, for a wife. Now Michal, Saul's other daughter, loved David. And when they told Saul, the thing was agreeable to him. And Saul thought, "I will give her to him, that she may become a snare to him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him." Therefore Saul said to David, "For a second time you may be my son-in-law today." Then Saul commanded his servants, "Speak to David secretly, saying, 'Behold, the king delights in you, and all his servants love you. Now therefore, become the king's son-in-law.'" So Saul's servants spoke these words to David, but David said, "Is it trivial in your sight to become the king's son-in-law, since I am a poor man and lightly esteemed?" And the servants of Saul reported to him according to these words which David spoke. And Saul then said, Thus you shall say to David, the king does not desire any dowry, except 100 foreskins of Philistines to take vengeance on the king's enemies. Now Saul planned to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. When his servants told David these words, actually pleased David to become the king's son-in-law. Before the days had expired, David rose up and went, and he and his men, and they struck down 200 men among the Philistines. Then David brought their foreskins, and they gave them in full number to the king, that he might become the king's son-in-law. So Saul gave him Michal, his daughter, for a wife. When Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him, then Saul was even more afraid of David. Thus Saul was David's enemy continually. Then the commanders of the Philistines went out to battle, and it happened as often as they went out that David behaved himself more wisely than all the servants of Saul. So his name was highly esteemed. Okay, so yeah, there is so much wrong in that section of verses, right? It makes me chuckle because there is so much wrong, right? There's so much wrong. And two, because we can see ourselves in it. At least in a minimum, we can see Hollywood all over it. I mean, first, he promised his daughter. Then when he was supposed to, he pulled it back. And then Saul's second daughter, Michal, right? She's already fallen in love with David, and Saul seemed, okay, I'm agreeable to that. Parenthesis here. I think there's a Delilah use intention by Saul, right? In somewhere I seem to hear an echo of that, to use her to cause someone to fall at the hand of the Philistines. Food for thought. And then we get to a point in the story. It's not only uncomfortable whilst reading it, but it also unknowingly, at the moment when we're reading this, we're going to need to remember this when we see and hear about something in the future and how challenging things can become. Okay, I know that probably sounded a little cryptic, but I hope you were listening to Saul setting up David, because Saul intended to have David go into battle and die because of something the king wanted. Unfortunately, it's nearly impossible for us not to be aware of certain things now, right? Because where we're at, we're not living in the timeline that it's happening. Still, we see a foreshadowing of David sending somebody else to battle to die for something that he wanted. And in both these stories, they're tied to women. So that's something you probably need to discuss amongst yourselves. Something worth getting together with friends and talking about. It's probably an interesting way to compare the story that we'll see in the future with this one when we get there. We can move on from that foreskin incident, which was uncomfortable for many people to read. But did you notice that it was double the dowry? Food for thought. So thank you for being with us tonight on another episode of Outside the Class with Samuel, our first scroll on the Dusty Feet.